The worst audience ever, people who know. I can't lie to you about anything. So thank you very much. You'll be pleased to know that I do not have a PowerPoint, mostly because I don't have a secretary or anyone to put that together for me. So I've thought also about talking in a language that is most familiar to me, and that is in pictures and stories, because I'm a journalist. So even if you don't like my speech, please indulge me and make the necessary noises at the right pauses and clap resoundingly at the end. Thank you very much. Okay. So Corneille phoned me and told me the overriding theme for today, which is Africa, the success story of the 21st century. But like all stories, we know that there are heroes and villains. We follow with a personal investment the travails of all the central characters. We hold our breath as the ones we love face death or glory in the fight for right, the triumph of good over evil. But stories are written by people, as we know all too well. People are motivated by intentions, and intentions can be self-serving, communal, safe, or dangerous. As we tell the story at hand, we cannot ignore the context in which it unfolds. Myopia will not serve a genuine interest to celebrate what is amazing and what gifts we have as a continent. We have to be real, everyone, about where we really are, what we are dealing with, so that in recalibrating our success story and our success strategy, we do it having laid our demons to rest, or at the very least, having faced those demons. So as a journalist, I always tell the young ones that I mentor, fresh out of journalism school, naive as naive can be, that the stories out there cannot be neatly packaged into boxes, along narratives that have already been decided by an editorial desk. That they have to go out there and they have to let those stories tell themselves. That the truth of what is out there must make it onto the copy, onto your screens, the radio sets, the newspapers, and the digital media. I'll try not to point, because people in Parliament took a lot of offense at that this week. So it's just by way of enunciating what I'm saying, but I won't point in case anyone finds it offensive. That was levity. Okay. In similar ways, in preparing what is, to me, this most important keynote address, I didn't want to focus only on the potential of this continent. I didn't want us to delude ourselves by sticking to the expected narrative. I want us to deal realistically with what we face and pragmatically how we fix it. No doubt that is the weighty responsibility on your shoulders tonight. I will leave, I'll go back to my job, but you have to carry your legacies forward. You have to make sure that what you teach and what you know, you are able to influence young minds with. In the last few weeks, South Africa has been placed in an invidious position of having to deal with the bloody ugliness of xenophobic violence, and it left our country scrambling to stem the blood and to provide safe refuge for thousands of displaced people. It had to also identify and condemn what seemed to be a small minority of criminally minded locals who wanted to capitalize on the vulnerability of our foreign nationals for narrow economic gain. At least that's one set of the narratives. As we looked at the armies sent in to lock down the violent hotspots, we saw massive tents erected to house the now homeless, and many shocked South Africans condemned the violence. Researchers with their arched eyebrows reminded political leaders that we've been here before. We've been warned before about the potential for conflict between locals and foreigners. That the reason for this type of violence had more than one root cause, and that many of the issues pointed back to not dealing efficiently, decisively, and realistically with the migrant question, the fight for resources, the resentment of the other that takes what's legitimately mine away from me. The need, and this is really important for me as a radio talk show host every day, this is one of the recurring and constant narratives, the need to revisit self-identity, the questions, vexing at times, of what makes us African. What makes us no different from someone whose colonizer was different to ours? French, British, Italian, Portuguese. The language and ways of our foreign masters should not have made us foreign to one another. Importantly, though, there were some serious political consequences that told us again that Africa, in looking forward to its future of economic success, has to fix the baggage of post-colonialism And more importantly, we have to constantly be seized with the decolonization project. We have to look frankly at the issues of human migration, about what makes a country so intolerable that people will spend blood money to get onto a shipping vessel at the mercy of unscrupulous traffickers and risk their lives for real on an open ocean into a country that does not want you there. We see the corpses of those dreams still bobbing on the oceans, imploring African leaders to get their houses in order so people don't have to leave their homelands, concerned that if they belong to the wrong tribe, speak the wrong language, look a way that is no longer acceptable, that they could die. That they could die anyway in a starving country that cannot produce food, that has no infrastructure, where their children will grow up illiterate without economic freedom. Besides answering these questions, South Africa has to face the diplomatic fallout. Malawi, Mozambique, Nigeria, some took their citizens home, others were threatening economic boycott, others were also considering recalling their highest diplomats. The SADC meeting, and I'm sure a lot of you would have paid attention to that a few weekends ago, could not avoid dealing with the problems and challenges of member countries. And guests on my radio show will tell you that unless the AU finds younger, more in-tune leaders, and in this room, you represent a microcosm of that leadership because you're leaders where you are, that unless you become more in tune, we cannot expect much by way of holding our member states to account. We have to urge a raising of the bar in terms of good governance and killing corruption. Otherwise, there'll be many more stories that end with the epilogue of failed or broken state. So those are the themes, and I'm glad that everyone's still looking at me and not looking for the exit, in some ways that illustrate the story. These are challenges, friends, that we have to consider in sustaining the Africa Rising narrative. So I'm going to pull out a few chapters now on how, given this backdrop, that not only in South Africa, but across the continent, the story has many different faces. Protest and fire in Egypt, Libya, the spectre of terror in Somalia, Kenya, Nigeria, uncertainty in South Sudan. The list is long, but success, innovation, and creativity are ever present. And how in learning from tenacious and brave entrepreneurs, the possibilities are made manifest. For a continent that does not have to take its cues from anywhere, but its own communities, its own people, and its own needs. I've spoken to agencies like the IDC, the NEF, and so on, and we know that there are always going to be impediments to finding finance, and that is always one of the biggest issues. But even before you get to finance, issues around just how to write a CV, how to write a business plan, simple basic things that people are struggling with, and that becomes an insurmountable obstacle. And we shouldn't have people dropping off the entrepreneurial chain so early on, when there's so many delicious and beautiful ideas and potential for such amazing businesses. I mean, the rat skin story for me was just, there's a real solution to a problem on the ground. All right, so let's take you to East Africa. And I did a couple of radio interviews with entrepreneurs on the continent who are also dealing with issues that they're seeing in their community. So it's not necessarily, oh, what's big in the world right now, what's a big trend or whatever. It's where am I now, and what is the need my community has now, and how can I respond to that? And you find the best, most authentic ideas are germinated out of that context. Hit it. We can go iHub first. In fact, okay, before you play iHub, let me tell you a bit about them. They're an important resource for Kenya's tech community, and they provide what's known as hybrid working spaces. So if you can't, find office buildings and stuff to work, this is a place where you can go, and a lot of people sort of plug in and have access.
Power Talk with Iman Rappetti, weekdays 9 a.m. to noon on Power 98.7. Now talking.
My name is Nakasa Wallace. I work with the iHub in Nairobi, Kenya. How did we come up with the iHub idea? The iHub came out of the need of the Kenyan tech community to have a space that they could call their own. Before the IHAB, there was already a tech community, but they met mostly online or sometimes in each other's offices or cafes, and that wasn't really sustainable. And so there was an increasing need for the tech community to have an actual physical space that they could call their own, that they had access to at any time they wanted, that had the basic amenities that a techie is going to need, so like your Wi-Fi and your coffees that you can drink late into the night, as well as people that generally understand the kind of language you speak and people that are innovators just like you. And so that was actually the need for the IHAB initially. Well, the biggest obstacle was trust. And by this, I mean, I think my feeling is that generally, at least in some cultures, and we experience this as well, people don't really want to be part of something until it's a success. It takes a lot to convince people, to invest in something when they can't really see what's in it for them initially. And so finding people who trusted and who believed in the idea initially was a success. I mean, it was an issue for us. There were several naysayers. But we eventually found someone that was willing to go the distance with us and believed in us and agreed to put some money into our venture and see what happened. My dream for African innovators is that we will increasingly begin to innovate as we think globally. Currently and very understandably, a lot of innovators will build and innovate to meet immediate needs, maybe to just meet a need to feed their families or meet a need for their local community. But I dream that African innovators will continuously get to a stage where we build globally. We build a product to think about how they can be used and how they can expand globally. I think that's the only way that we begin to play on the global market and everyone begins to, listen to Africa as she speaks and as she rises. The one word is collaboration.
Power to your ambition. Power to what you stand for, to what you believe in.
Sorry, Walter, I hope you don't mind. A little bit of free advertising, my radio station. Anyway, so the point is, and I think you made the point earlier, both you and Nicola, about the importance of collaboration, that the only way you sort of double what you have is by connecting with people who already have. We'll just play the 1 acre story, and the 1 acre story is really interesting. It's fostering a new generation of farmers in Africa. And what they do is they give feed and fertilizer on credit. They deliver materials for pickup, and they train farmers how to use them, and it helps them with their harvest. It was launched in Kenya, but it's already spread to Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania.
Power Talk with Iman Rappetti, weekdays 9 a.m. to noon on Power 98.7. Now talking.
Jenny Best, 1 Acre Fund. How we came up with the idea, really our founder, Andrew, was visiting Kenya back in 2006 and met smallholder farmers who were really struggling and going hungry. And he quickly came up with a model that involved loaning on credit seeds, fertilizer, and training for planting, agriculture training, to farmers at the time of year they needed it most. So they could get planting done in time so they could reap a good harvest later on. And on average, farmers working with us double their harvest now. So we're now serving 280,000 farmers across Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Burundi. Biggest obstacles. I think generally when you're serving rural smallholder farmers, the biggest obstacle is always going to be distribution. I think that's one of the reasons why they're so removed from so many services and things they need access to succeed. And so our truck drivers will navigate difficult roads, rainy weather, mud, and often the trucks will turn over, but we get the inputs to them on time and within walking distance of their homes, no matter what. Well, personally, I think that I would love to see a world where the rural people of mostly East Africa, where we work, are able to get the education that they want, where their parents can afford to send them to school, and to chase their dreams, whatever that may be. I think that's one of the foundations of a really successful economy and happy world. One word, I would say learn. And I would explain that by learn from your failures and share your failures. I think a lot of organizations are too afraid to talk about their failures. And at One Acre Fund, that's something we're really committed to doing openly. We recently published a series of documents on our website, for example, that actually document our failures, to share them openly so that if organizations want to come and replicate our work, they can learn from our mistakes and hopefully not repeat them.
Power to your ambition. Power to what you stand for, to what you believe.
I mean, for me, those are powerful things. And every day, I'm fortunate in the work that I do to connect with people who are just, they're not the kind of stand on the sidelines kind of people, waiting for a handout kind of people. And I know that that is the attitude, especially of foreign investors towards Africa, that unless there's a grant, unless there's a fund, unless there's somebody that's going to give you something for free or reward the fact that you were colonized and that we're still as a continent facing, as I said, the prospects of this decolonization project. Actually, no. There are people who are doing it. They're bootstrapping themselves. They make a bit of money, they put that away, and they begin to, create a compound fund for themselves. And those, to me, are the people that I really salute. And I really hope that each of you here today, in whatever capacity you interface with young minds and people who are excited, that you're able to create that combustion of ideas and potential. Well, given the great potential and the living success, no doubt, right, of the stories I've just shared with you, and the background, we know a lot of countries face this deindustrialization. I've spoken about migration, political instability, the proxy wars we've seen. What is the prognosis for the continent's health? I turn to a respected economist, and a lot of you might already know him, for his assessment of our state and the medicine needed to tell a genuine and true story of success and sustainability. Iraj Abedian is an independent economist. He's also the non-executive director, or one of the non-executive directors for Property Capital Fund, and a board member of the Development Bank of South Africa. So this is what he told me last night. He said some interesting things. He said Africa being a latecomer in terms of innovation and technology is an advantage. The fact that Africa is behind in many areas means that it can leapfrog ahead of the curve. He said this word 3 times though: governance, governance, governance. Governance is key. Abedian believes that if governments just got out of the way, for example in South Africa for 9 months, South Africa's energy problems could be resolved by putting credible skills into the problem and not political appointments. Hey, his words, not mine. He cites the example of Nigeria being a top oil exporter, that there's a shortage there of petrol and diesel. Government there, he says, is an example of a government that is failing in its job unless it changes. There are exciting prospects for Africa. We all know, and I think in all of those stories, they were just young people, unless somebody saw an older person. All of those were young people. The younger generation is more connected. Elders, and this is Abedian again saying, elders are slow, uneducated, parochial, and then he sort of quipped at the end and said, but they're dying. Younger people have less inhibitions, he says, and places like Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa, that's where that lack of inhibitions is visible. We all know that Africa has the youngest population in the world, 200 million people between the ages of 15 and 24, and the experts tell us this number will double in the next 20 years. The World Bank also tells us that 60% of Africa's unemployed are young people. In North Africa, an eyebrow-raising 30% are unemployed. And young people, we know this is a story, young women rather, we know this is a story the world over, are feeling the ravages of unemployment more harshly. In sub-Saharan Africa and in all of North Africa, the African Development Bank tells us it's easier for men to get jobs than women, even if they have the same skills and experience. So you may find what Abedian said outrageous and perhaps even a little unkind. Walter, I hope you didn't think it was too unkind.
You went already very fast.
But the lesson is that times are changing, and that a new way that's evolved out of this old way with lessons learned must be the way that we go. These must be the real stars by which we navigate. And this makes your role even more crucial. Are you creating a new context for the genesis and germination of new wealth, built on new ideas, built on new dreams? How are you evolving to match the demands of an ever more demanding and ever more competitive continent? To all of you gathered in this room who hold influence, over the minds of young people, what is your pledge towards ensuring that a new, better script is written for the growth of this continent? What is your promise about what you teach, how you engage, and how prepared you are to navigate into new horizons, seeking out the very best for this continent? What conclusion are you writing for this book of Africa's success? I'm no expert, but I don't believe that you need to be one to spot the obvious. We've been shown exciting ways that our people are making something out of nothing. Let's make that miracle the norm for more emerging economies that can challenge soul-sapping bureaucracy, that ask for a new way. I wish you well over your conference, and I long to hear how you have distilled Africa's roadmap to success stories, not only for a few villages and towns here and there, but for a movement of stories that span the length and breadth of this great continent, that restore the dignity of what was taken from us through true wealth and true ownership. Thank you.
I'm in a bad situation now at my age, but anyway, I'm about to die. But at least before dying, I've been able to invite Iman, and I'm very happy to have been able to do that. Thank you very much for your speech, which, other than the few grim stories in the beginning, was really the purpose of the whole thing. I think that the message that I at least take from this, and indeed, how can we business schools contribute to that? It's not good enough just to be good. I mean, you also have to be relevant. And I think the stories that you showed us, that you shared with us all, are stories of people that might not even have been through business schools, but at least they do relevant things that do have and will have a tremendous impact in the world. So thank you very much for this opening speech, which I think certainly sets the scene. Thank you, and thanks, Iman, for this speech.